Hi everybody, I thought I would record a video for you here just kind of demonstrating how you might annotate or take notes, especially if you're going to have to summarize and respond to something that you've read for a course. Now, a summary and response is probably one of the most common types of assignments that you'll have to do when you're in school. So again, I just wanted to show you what that might look like. So I'm going to kind of flip back and forth between a text and the notes that I actually took on it. So, I chose to type mine out. You could write yours on a piece of paper, however you want to do it. So I'm looking at this essay that's in your textbook, so you might want to look at this for just a second before you continue watching this video, but it's on starting on page 246 of your book, and it's this essay called Course Requirement Extortion. It's an example of a proposal. So this guy is proposing a solution to a problem that he's identified. So again, I would read the whole thing through once just to kind of get a sense of what it's about, but then I would start annotating some notes so that I have some content to go off of when I have to actually write an assignment about it. So let me just show you some of the notes that I took. I'll flip to my notes here. So again, how you do this is up to you. You're the only one who's going to be looking at these things, so you can use abbreviations, symbols, whatever you want to do. I chose to just kind of use bullet points here so that I can easily see the different points that I'm discussing here. But, the way that I started is by just kind of taking some notes about the author here. So if you look, this is an example from the online text, so it doesn't really show the biography here, but I think in your actual textbook, underneath the author's name, you'll see that there's a little bio about him. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with anything? That might be relevant or something to think about when you're both summarizing and responding to the text. So you'll see here, again, it's this guy, Michael Granoff. What it tells us in the biography is that he is an accounting professor, and he is the chairman of this university co-op bookstore, and he writes textbooks for a living. Well, if you read this essay, it's about the high cost of college textbooks, which, again, you guys can probably relate to, or if not yet, you will. And he's saying that that's a really big problem, and he wants to find a solution to it. So the thing is, him being an accounting professor, he knows a lot about money. The fact that he is a chairman of this university bookstore, he knows a lot about the system of textbooks, and he writes textbooks for a living. Knowing that information gives him some credibility, right? If this were just written by Joe Schmo off the street, maybe we wouldn't take his point so seriously. But again, just knowing a little bit about the author can make you consider how much you trust the information that you're getting. So again, I thought that was something important. You'll notice that the title of this essay is Course Requirement Extortion. So anytime you're reading, if you aren't quite sure what a word means, especially if it's in the title of the essay, because that means it's something that's important to the meaning of the text, I would look it up. And again, I know what the word extortion means generally, but if you look up the word, like I did here, extortion means obtaining something, especially money, through force or threats. That seems something important to this text, because what this man is implying is that when you are forced to buy expensive textbooks, you're kind of threatened with failure of the course if you don't do that thing, right? So it's showing how unfair he thinks it is that you have to spend a lot of money on textbooks. And I think most of us agree with that. So let's kind of look at the structure of what he did here. In the first several paragraphs of the essay, he's giving background on the problem. He wants to explain the way that textbooks work and why it is that they cost so much money. And again, that's important information. So when I was annotating, I was both jotting down information but also giving my reaction. I think that's a good thing to do because a lot of times when you're reading, thoughts go through your head like, oh, I don't buy that, or oh, that's a really good idea. And, you know, by the time you get done reading something, a lot of times you've forgotten those reactions that you had. Jotting stuff down as it comes to you can really help you in figuring out how to respond when you have to write about it later. So I would just put that stuff in your notes. So again, one of the things that he tells us here is that most college textbooks range from about $120 to $180 per book. And my reaction was, dang, that's a lot. It's maybe not that surprising, but it's just that amount, seeing it, that's a lot on average to spend for one book for one class, right? So that's important information to know. He also tells us that the government proposes that we should fix the used book market, that if we make that better, then it'll be more affordable for students. And then his reaction to that is he thinks that idea sucks. And again, in my notes, I can say it however I want to. I'd probably use a different word than sucks when I was writing about it in my response. But again, he thinks that that idea sucks because used books are actually perpetuating this problem. They're the reason why publishers charge so much money for textbooks the first time they sell them, because they know that those books are going to be sold later for a cheaper price. So they try to gouge you in the very beginning. Again, I sort of explained that here. Because of used books, publishers only make a lot of money per book one time. So they're going to charge you a whole lot of money, and then after that, that used book price is usually much smaller. Again, sort of explain that here. As a result, they charge a ton because they know that the book is going to be resold used for much cheaper. Again, another kind of terminology thing from the text is he uses this word obsolescence. If you look that up, that means, you know, you've probably heard something becoming obsolete, right? That means something is outdated and it can't be used anymore. So again, by using this current system with textbooks, it's ensuring that these books are going to become outdated and not usable because, you know, these textbook publishers might change just a few things and then put out a new edition, making your old edition essentially worthless, right? So again, he's pointing all this stuff out to show that it's really unfair the way things are working at the moment. So something that you want to identify early on is where this writer states his or her thesis, because you need to understand what the main point is to decide how much you agree or disagree with it, right? You know, and a lot of times that thesis will be close to the, you know, end of the introduction. In this case, it takes this writer a little bit longer to actually state his thesis. And again, I think it works in this case. So I'll show you here. It's not until page 248, a couple pages in, where he actually comes out and states his thesis. So right here, he says, therefore, just as software companies typically cite license to colleges, so should textbook publishers. So again, you know, I just sort of jotted that exact thing down right here, and I made sure to jot down the page number too, so I could come back to it if I need to, right? But again, you know, he's saying here that instead of these books only being sold one time and then becoming essentially useless, that we should just license books, and that will make the cost much cheaper to students, right? So once you've identified the thesis, then you want to look for these different instances where the writer is trying to prove that thesis. Again, if his opinion is that we should license textbooks instead of selling the physical books only one time, he's got to give us good reasons for that, right? So as I'm identifying his reasons here, I kind of give my reaction right after, like how much I agree or disagree with him. Because again, if you're responding, and we're going to look at that later on in the learning activity here, but when you respond, that's where you're giving your opinion about what you see in a text, right? So he gives several claims here that he uses to support his thesis. So one of them is that he says that this is good because textbook publishers will end up making more money in the long run if they can keep licensing these same books year after year rather than only making a lot of money one time, right? So a potential objection that I can see with that is, yeah, that makes sense, but will these publishers be okay with making significantly less all at once than they typically do, right? Because again, if they're making $120 to $180 per book now, if you're only licensing these books for whatever, $15, $20 per semester, then that means that these companies are going to be making a lot less in the short term, right? Will they be happy with that? And again, that's just my kind of question or concern with his claim, right? Maybe something he hasn't considered. So another claim he makes is that students will ultimately pay a lot less than they do now, right? And again, that sounds great. So I said, although this sounds great, how about students in smaller classes with, less students? Will they end up paying a lot more than students in big classes? Because again, if you set up some agreement with these textbooks companies and you agree to pay however many $100 per course, if you only have 7 students in the course, does that mean they're going to have to pay a lot more? Students might not like that, right? Kind of a third point he makes is that you can still have a used book system with this idea that he's come up with. You can still sell stuff used, but again, you're ultimately going to be paying a lot less than you would with the current system. So an objection that I might see is just because publishers can lower their book costs, they could, will they actually do it, right? They're running a business and they want to make as much money as they can. So again, that's him hypothesizing this could happen, but will it work in reality, right? Fourth claim that he makes is that teachers could assign the books that they actually want without worrying about the price. And my reaction as an instructor is, yes, that would be really helpful. I don't want to make students buy really expensive books that they can't afford. So with this system, that might help reduce that problem. And then the last kind of major claim that he makes in his text is that this system would make college more of a reality for students and their parents than it is now. Like, people sometimes can afford college, but they can't afford the books that they need in order to be successful in those courses, right? Again, my reaction is that's always a good thing when we make college more possible for everybody, right? And I said especially as college is expensive enough, right? So again, I just wanted to show you this. The idea is that, look, I have a full page full of notes right now that I could use to help me write a nice summary and response, right? So again, I think reading things closely can really help you in the long run, right? And again, reading is not just something that you do with your eyes, like I'm showing you here. It's something you also do with your fingers, either through typing or writing things down as you're reading. So again, maybe just think about these things as you are kind of preparing for your next assignment. But again, just wanted to give you some tips about reading to help you out. Okay, thanks. Bye.